Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us on today's webinar. Today's session will be presented to you by Aaron Mull, Managing Partner at On Time Edge, and David Hunt, Director of Global Accounts and Alliances at Zontal. Today's presentation is part one of a two-part series, Fair Data, Empowering Data-Driven Insights and Decisions with AI in Pharma.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Aaron Mull with On Time Edge. On Time Edge is a technology-focused consulting firm. We ultimately help manufacturing companies implement digital transformation technology in manufacturing. We've been doing this for decades, and we're excited about the topic today, talking about fair data and how to use fair data for your AI-based decisions. Next slide, please. This is the agenda we've put together. We're going to introduce kind of the overall problem statement or what we're seeing in the marketplace. And then we're going to talk through how fair data applies to that and how fair data is used to ultimately enable your machine learning and AI-based decisions. Next slide, please. So what we're hearing from our clients and the industry in general is AI, machine learning, whatever you want to call it, is disruptive. There's a lot of questions around it. There's a lot of time and money being spent deciding if it's valuable to the organization, to the department within the organization, to the process, whatever it may be. And the interesting thing about AI and machine learning in general is, in order to take advantage of some of these new technologies that are out there, a lot of the preparation work is the same as taking advantage of some of the technologies that have been out for a decade or 2 decades, right? At the end of the day, whether you're doing AI or whether you're doing predictive analytics or even heuristic-based scheduling tools, those are all data-hungry platforms. And what we see is, in order to take advantage of that, first, you have to identify the problem and collect data that you're going to use to solve that problem. And then there's a step that often goes unnoticed, which is cleaning the data, right? Often that data comes from different sources. It's in different formats or schemas in the database world. And to make that data useful and ultimately use it in your tool, you have to clean it, put it in the same format, get rid of bad data or outliers. There's a lot of work that goes into that part of the process. Once you get through that, you select the AI tool you think is best to solve your problem. You move it into the tool. You prepare the tool, right? So you prep the data inside the tool itself. You build your model. You analyze your results. You optimize your model. You now flow into more of a continuous improvement process. And so what we're going to talk about today is really the first part of this process flow. Next slide, please. And that is it's really the time and energy spent collecting the data, cleaning the data. For people who do this on a daily basis, they're painfully aware of what this takes. And there's a lot of technology, and there's some tools out there that can help with that and really get everyone's time back to focus on the important things, which is using the data to drive insights. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to David with Zontal. David's a director at Zontal, and he's going to talk through the Fair Data Standard and how it applies.
Thank you, Aaron. Hello, my name is David Hunt, and I'm honored to be speaking to you today. We're going to have a theme throughout this, and this is a two-part webinar, but the theme is going to be without clean, harmonized, fair data. AI and machine learning projects just aren't going to happen. Analytics and dashboards run on data. Accurate reports can't be generated, and compliance is time-consuming and difficult. Machine learning and AI project costs, generally broken down, are about 50% of the entire project is cleansing the data first. it's broken down to 50% of data harmonization and fair data. We're going to talk about fair data a lot, and fair data is findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. We're going to go into depth about fair data later, but to continue about the cost of a project, 25% of the cost will actually be in the platform or the software or the data platform. And then if you're looking at your project, 25% of those costs doing a data cleansing project is going to be internal costs. So you want to allow for that when you're doing your budgeting. Now, in our experience, during about the past 10 years, 80% of the companies that we talk to don't have an effective strategy to get their data cleansed, and even fewer of them have a plan to execute on the solution. Next slide, Amy. This slide is complicated because it's complicated. We found that a single instrument, one instrument, can have unidirectional APIs to as many as 6 different applications. This data is siloed into a single receiving database, which is different than all the others. And every time there's an upgrade or an application change, all of the APIs need to be rewritten. There is a better way, and we call that the Zontal data platform. Next slide, Amy. I'm showing you this slide to tell you how Zontal came about. Back in 2012, about 50 of the largest pharma manufacturing companies set out to create a standard for its use of data and data reuse. Wolfgang Kolzmann, who is our CEO, was selected as the architect for that project. The foundation, after a period of time, came up with what's called fair data as a solution. Fair, again, is findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. The problem was, after the foundation set the standard, there was no company to fulfill the requirements or execute on that vision. That is when Wolfgang founded Zontal. Next slide. So this is a visual representation of what a company wants to go to. So as we promised, I'll go into fair data a little bit more on what it is and what it does. Fair data is actually a very simple concept. As data from disparate sources are created or generated, and I mean all data, spreadsheets, instruments, ELN, ERP, MES, handwritten notes on crayon on the back of an envelope, doesn't matter. All that data is then automated and ingested, harmonized, and preserved. On ingestion, it's made fair. Once that's done, you can use, reuse, and reuse data as predictive, prescriptive, diagnostic, and descriptive. You can create dashboards. And of course, all of this is being done preparing the way for your AI. The only thing that's going to limit you is your current need, which is what we're going to address, and then how creative you can become in the future. Next slide, please. All right. So we looked at the complicated, and now let's look at where we want to go as an integrated data company. So this is a visual representation of the data goal. Now remember, the Zontal data platform, which is the middle layer, is 2 ways. We're not only ingesting data, harmonizing it, and storing it as fair data, we are also then sending fair data to wherever you want. So here's an example. You want data out of your ELN and then into your LIMS. Here's another example. You want your data out of your LIMS into the ERP and the MES. And one more example. We want data out of all of the above into our AI. All of this is because Zontal is multi-directional. And lastly, I'd like to point out on this slide, generally in life, when you do the right thing, good things happen as a result. Zontal can populate your current data lakes, or you can retire the other data lakes and use the one Zontal has created, thus making the process simpler and less costly. Next slide. Here's an outline of the machine learning framework inside Zontal, where you put the calculations to where the data is instead of taking the data out to do the calculations elsewhere. Inside Zontal, you have direct access to high-quality data sets, and you can use pre-trained models and fine-tune them. Ultimately, you can deploy your models to where the data is and where the new data is going. Today's best-of-breed app that everybody loves and is the greatest thing since sliced bread, one day is going to be on a decommissioning block. It's just inevitable. We are seeing that many ELNs and LIMS were not able to effectively make the leap to cloud, and they're being retired. There may have 20 years of data and experiments that you need access to for yourself or possibly for regulatory reasons somewhere down the road. As I said before, when you do the right thing, good things happen. The Zontal data platform will ingest all the legacy data from your current and your decommissioned systems, as well as the new apps that are being rolled out now. Zontal will start to ingest data as it's created, making it fair, and then your entire organization will be continuously digitized and current and compliant, giving you for the first time the ability to do a true enterprise search. For example, you want the results from a 40-year-old experiment? You've got it. Want to know how many variations of that experiment were done and the results? You've got it. You want to see the visual results from a plate done 25 years ago? You've got it. So this is just a brief view of what the data platform will look like. We have visualizations. We have underlying chain of command. We have specifics on it. This is clean, harmonized, fair data that can be used and reused. So with that having been said, I'd like to turn it back over to Aaron for a recap, and then we can go into questions and answers.
Thank you, David. Hopefully the message resonated, right? Regardless of how you're using your data. A lot of times we've worked with companies that data from 10, 20 years ago, they still have it and they saved it, not really knowing what they were going to use it for later. And it became highly valuable for predictive analytics or AI type solutions today, right? So it's not really just about the data you're creating today or tomorrow or in the future. It's about all of the historical data as well. And even if it's in many, many different databases, hard drives, formats, being able to pull it together in one place, normalize it, right? Put it in a standard format, take advantage of a standard that's out there and have the data be the same format. There's huge value, right? And one of the big things that we see is there's a lot of data lakes out there. There's a lot of different databases. Typically they talk about how to get the data in. Not very many of them talk about how to get the data back out. And to us, that's even more critical. If you're going to spend all the time and energy pulling the data together and normalizing it and formatting it, you need to be able to take advantage of the next great analysis tool or AI tool that's in the market and easily extract that data and on the extract transform it so it's in the format that tool needs it in, so that you can take advantage and be agile and be quick about making use of new technology. So it solves a lot of your current problems, and it also allows you to be flexible and quick to react when there is the next best analysis tool or AI tool available for you to use. So with that, if we could go to questions. How easy is it to get data out of the platform? So that I'll let maybe Christoph jump in and answer the question, but to me, I've seen a lot of platforms over the years. This is what I'm most excited about, is the ability to not just get the data out, right? But it's to transform the data into the right schema or the right format for the destination. And Christoph is better equipped to go into details there.
Yes. So the first way to get data out is visually display it inside Zontal. So you can have every data set that we ingest comes with a visualization per se. That's part of the fair data and part of our information package concept, that you always know even after and David said it, even after 25 years, you still can look at that data. You don't need a proprietary tool. So this is why you have everything in that self-explanatory data package. But then if you want to go across different operational concepts, or like just across, like over time, look at a certain measurement, then you can extract that data from Zontal directly out to anything that can query and can use a JDBC or ODBC driver and query that like a database, like a SQL database. If you want to do something more sophisticated, you're a data scientist, you get that data out via the APIs that we have, REST APIs, and you can use the same the same concepts and the same tools that we're using, because we're also using our own APIs to do the same, to display the data, to get the data out to you. So this is what a data scientist would also use from like externally accessing the platform.
Are there limits to how many data sources I can use? I don't know of any limits, Christoph. Are there?
No, there are no limits to the data sources. That was one of the outcomes, very early outcomes of this Allotrope Foundation, that everybody came with his thousands of different instruments, instrument types, and instrument versions. So no, there's no limit.
Are there limits to how many times we can use the data? No, there are no limits. There are no technical limits. There are no commercial limits, right? It's your data. You own the data. A lot of the data lakes out there, or a lot of the platforms out there, try to ingest your data and sell it back to you. It's not the model, right? It is your data. As you increase the size and quantity of your data, the licensing doesn't change, right? So commercially, there's no limitations. A lot of companies will put commercial limitations on there, right? And there are no technical limitations. Once it is set up and connected to data sources, to what extent is the Zontal platform self-serviced? So that's a great question. There's a lot of flexibility as to how you can architect this. You can host it in your infrastructure if you want. You can use the cloud. It's really up to you and your IT standards, how you want to make use of it. And again, the size of the data, of course, there's a cost for the storage of the data, but it's not part of the license fee, right? Yeah. Which is very different than most data platforms. Most data platforms, they build into their licensing the size of the data. We're gonna increase the license fee back to you, and they're essentially selling your data back to you, right? That is not part of the licensing.
Yes. And as soon as you get data in the platform, it comes, as I said, it comes with a search. So you can always search for your data if you want to get back to your data. Any user can at any time, at any point in time. And not only get back to the raw data, but get back to the parsed data, and even get back to a visualization that shows the data graphically.
And then I saw a question about compliance reports. How easy are compliance reports to generate? Right. The word easy is relative. What I would say to that is a lot of companies are already creating compliance reports in something, right? Maybe you have an EBR tool that you're using for production, right? Or maybe you have a LIMS that you're using for the quality lab. If that's the case, if you've already spent the time and effort generating those compliance reports in some other tool, you can use Zontal to feed that tool, right? To better architect how that data flows and gets to that tool. Like David was talking about, there may be many different sources and many different formats, and Zontal can clean that up and expedite that, and not only get the data to your compliance tool or your compliance reporting tool, but make that data useful for other reasons. Or you can build your views or reports inside of Zontal, and maybe Christoph, you could talk about how that works a little bit.
Yes, so every part of Zontal is has a full audit trail. So every package, every data package that we read in, parse, and store and make available has a full audit trail. And on top, you can, as I just said, you can query that data in reports, that in standardized reports that you can set up in the system, but also you can predefine calls, API calls, or database queries from the outside that are standardized, and all of these are stored inside the system, inside inside GitLab. So all of the parsing, all of the different programs that are like subprograms that are running are controlled inside the system. So when you are querying the data, it is like you can be absolutely sure that you retrieve the results that you retrieve are correct and are compliant with the GXP, for example.
Yeah, the beauty of it is Zontal is going to automate a lot of that busy work, right? Aggregating the data, cleaning it, normalizing it, and it's going to give you the freedom to select the tool that's best for the problem at hand. You can build the compliance report in Zontal. Some customers do that.
Yep.
Or if there's something that just fits what you need better, if there's some third party, you can attach it to Zontal. Use Zontal to clean the data and feed the data to that tool, and really just focus on building that compliance report and spend your time on what's valuable, not on the data cleanup. Can I easily create dashboards and analytics, or do I have to add a third-party application? So again, the word easy, right? It's all relative. What makes it easy is you get choices. You can build, you're going to get ways to see your data in Zontal. You could use those views as just a data management method, right? So to be able to see it and visualize it and make sure it's been cleaned up properly, and maybe feed something else that's your enterprise dashboard or your reporting tool, or you can build it in Zontal. It gives you the freedom, right? So Zontal is going to clean the data, going to make it accessible. It's going to take out the busy work, and then you get to pick whatever best visualization tool is for your application or your business, and change it. That's the unspoken part, right? If you really normalize the data in one place and then make it accessible to 5 different systems, that's okay. If one of those systems becomes obsolete, or becomes the vendor just doesn't do a good job keeping it up to date, and there's something better out there, you've radically reduced the cost to make a switch, right? You'll have to reconnect the new one. Maybe you'll have to build your report, but you're not going to have to spend all that time on data cleanup and providing the data. Are there data protocol limitations? I don't know of any, but Christoph, you probably are best to answer that.
That's an interesting one. So when you can access the data by using any kind of batch processing or streaming, you can store it in Zontal. It's in your hands to decide how big you pack these data packages. And this is something I think is also unique about the platform, that we're usually pulling data in from external sources. As soon as there is an API for it, we are using that API. If there's a stream of data, we can deal with that as well. And then it's up to the configuration what to do with this data. So if this is how I understand that question, so if not, please just reiterate.
Yeah, Howard, it's a great question. There's 2 aspects to it, right? There's the inbound data that you're collecting, and then there's the outbound data that you're providing. And depending on the perspective, the answers might vary a little bit. If you're talking about inbound data, right? Zontal doesn't have natively the ability to talk to an Allen Bradley PLC or Siemens PLC, but it has the ability to take that data and format it and normalize it. So there might be a conversion utility in between, like a Kepware, right? Something like that that talks the machine specific protocol and then spits it out in a data format that Zontal ingests, right? So there may be interface layers depending on what you're talking to, and that's very normal. And then on the way out, there's a lot of flexibility on how Zontal can provide the data to systems, right? What most people want is to use the API, but if you have legacy systems that need data in a file format, that can be done too. If there's some, specific protocol, there may have to be some sort of conversion utility there. Like if you have to get it back into OPC, or if you have to get it into, right, something very specific like that, that's older and legacy based, there's usually a way. There's no technical limitations, but it's more standards focused in terms of getting data in and out, and it's flexible in terms of reformatting the data and making it usable using your company data standard or an industry standard. Where does the data reside? It resides in the Zontal server or data layer, right? Where that server resides is up to you. You have the flexibility depending on your IT standards, what you want. It can be cloud-based, it can be hosted in any of the big cloud providers, Azure, AWS, Google, or inside your own infrastructure. Again, depending on what makes the most amount of sense for you, and every company is a little different, and that's okay.
Yeah. And there is this idea of this allotrope standard format, which is an open standard. That means even like you can take these data sets, you can take these files and use them outside of Zontal. These are yours and they are in an open standard. So you can easily just pick them apart and they are self-explanatory. So there is all the metadata in there. There's the data in there. There's the raw files in there if we ingested raw files, and a JSON representation of that whole thing. So this data package, this is available to you in wherever you want it. And this is, as I said, this is something that Zontal produces natively.
Can this be used for other industries? Yes. That's the simple question, right? We're looking at it in the discrete world very heavily. The data types have slightly different names, but the formats are not necessarily different, right? So when you get outside the world of the process industry, is going to be similar to pharma, right? So if you're talking food or specialty chem or things like that, the systems and the data formats are all very similar with maybe slightly different names based on the industry. But we think it fits great in the discrete world as well for SBC type data, for data making, machining metal parts or molding or things like that, assembly. So the simple answer is yes. If you want to try it out and see your data, let us know, and we'd be happy to take the data set that you have in mind and show it to you.
It looks like that was our last question. If there are any questions that you didn't get a chance to ask, or if you would like more information about the topics covered today, please email info@ontimeedge.com. I want to thank our presenters, Aaron Mull, David Hunt, and our special guest, Christoph Gansler, for an informative presentation today. We appreciate your time. Have a wonderful day, everyone, and we look forward to meeting with you again soon.